Hello, good evening. Thanks for being with us tonight here on The Hill. I'm Blake Burman. This is The Hill on News Nation. President Trump at the Kennedy Center, playing a bit of MC, you could say, while the president says he plans to host its next major event. This comes, by the way, as we were just talking about, as he's also calling in the National Guard. His crime crackdown, as he calls it, continuing in the nation's capital. But how long will Congress actually allow that to happen?
Well, if it's a national emergency, we can do it without Congress, but we expect to be to Congress before Congress very quickly.
Also tonight, is it game, set, match for Zohran Mamdani in New York City? There are new numbers out tonight, and we are breaking them down with Scott Tranter from Decision Desk HQ. But first tonight here from The Hill, a warning to Russia. The commander-in-chief with this vow to Vladimir Putin ahead of their summit at the end of this week if Russia doesn't soon end its war inside Ukraine.
I don't have to say there will be very severe consequences. There's a very good chance that we're going to have a second meeting, which will be more productive than the first, because the first is I'm going to find out where we are and what we're doing.
We'll find out on Friday. That meeting between Trump and Putin expected to take place in Anchorage, Alaska. The White House describing it as a quote-unquote listening exercise. That's their term, aimed at getting an idea of where Putin stands on a possible ceasefire with Ukraine, as the president tries to make a step toward broader peace talks. So why, of all places, Alaska? Well, some of it quite literally is just practical. Putin is subject to international criminal court warrants, which limits where he can theoretically travel. In fact, a waiver was just issued to allow him to travel here to the U.S. The two had their first face-to-face, you might remember, back in Helsinki, summer of 2008. It drew all sorts of international intrigue at the time. Anchorage will be the first time Trump and Putin meet face-to-face since 2019. They met at the G20 summit there at one point in time in Japan. Now, here in the second term, Trump and Putin have spoken by phone several times. But there's more history here. This is not the first time our country has held a summit on U.S. soil with the Russian leader. Back in 2003, for example, George W. Bush meeting with Putin, Camp David. 1988, New York, Lady Liberty, there in the background. Reagan and Gorbachev. But a key player will not be in the last frontier on Friday. The Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. He was in Berlin today talking with European leaders, where he also had a virtual meeting with Trump. Zelensky saying he hopes the main focus of the meeting will remain on a ceasefire, but also thinks, in his words, that Putin is bluffing.
Putin definitely does not want peace. He wants to occupy our country, and we all understand that very well. Putin cannot fool anyone.
So on the other side of the pond, European leaders weighing in as well, echoing the sentiment that Ukraine must be part of any meaningful negotiation. The president suggesting earlier this week that peace might require mutual concessions, including territorial swaps. But Ukraine is making it clear that they will not give up any territory or land. Mick Mulvaney with me here on The Hill in a moment, but we start tonight with the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee. He is Congressman Adam Smith, back with us once again. Congressman, it is always nice to see you. Your summer recess, I appreciate you taking out the time to be with us tonight. As I sort of lay some of it, not all of it out there, obviously, that is some of the backdrop. And I wonder, from your perch at the House Armed Services Committee, what your expectations are going into this.
Well, I don't think a lot's going to come out of it. I think President Trump has really sort of lowballed expectations in recent days. His conversations with Zelensky and with Europe sort of show that. I don't think it's particularly bad that they have the conversation. What's bad to date is that President Trump has not shown, I think, the unity behind Ukraine to really put pressure on Putin. I think some of the things they said, obviously, early in the Trump administration that sort of tried to blame the war on Ukraine, undermine Zelensky, undermine them, embolden Putin. So I'm hoping we're reversing course on that now and putting pressure on Putin. President Trump has threatened sanctions against Russia before, has not done anything along those lines. I think we need to make clear to President Putin the U.S. is with Ukraine, and we're with our 53-nation alliance that is standing with Ukraine as well. Go ahead.
Do you think those sanctions are coming? Because that's sort of what the president is holding over Putin, saying if this doesn't wrap up at some point in the near future here, these sort of secondary tariffs that could devastate the Russian economy would be coming?
It's really hard to say because there's been a big shift in the Trump administration position. You saw those first few months when it was, they periodically froze some assistance that we were giving Ukraine. Trump attempted to distance us from the European allies who were fighting with us. It was all positive signals for Putin. And then just in the last month and a half, as it dawned on President Trump that President Putin is not actually serious about peace, he's beginning to shift some of that rhetoric. So it's hard to know at this point where President Trump is going. Where he needs to go is, like I said, stand behind Ukraine, put the pressure on Putin, use sanctions if you have to force Putin to negotiate an end to this war. It's not going to happen if Putin thinks there's no pressure on him and he can just take the rest of Ukraine when he wants to.
Here was Zelensky today. He said Putin definitely doesn't want peace. He wants to occupy our country, and we all understand that very well. I mentioned you're the ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee. Is that how you see it? Is that your assessment?
Yes, right now, but there's one important caveat to that. If the cost appears too high, then Putin has to change his calculation. And frankly, the cost has already risen much higher than President Putin thought it was going to be over 3 years ago when he started this invasion. Remember, the plan was to take Kyiv in a matter of days,
right?
Not even weeks. That got stalled. Now Russia is suffering appalling casualties. Their economy is completely dependent upon the war, and that is beginning to weaken. You see inflation going up. You see the value of the ruble going down. So he is under some pressure. If that pressure gets great enough, then that's when he has to come to the table and try to negotiate a deal. And that's something that I do hope that the Trump administration now understands.
So let me leave you with this. What does success look like, Congressman? Because they're gonna meet on Friday. That's the expectation. The president today even suggesting maybe a follow-up after that. There could be a meeting with the three of them at some point. But as it relates to Friday, and we're talking about success, that leads to or looks like what?
Well, obviously, the ultimate success would be a ceasefire. But I don't think we should set that expectation. What success looks like is President Trump delivering the clear message that I just described. Success looks like Putin walking away from this going, whatever the Trump administration was in January, February, and March and beyond, that seemed to be giving me a green light in Ukraine, that's gone. I have to recalculate. Success looks like standing up strong against Putin's invasion of Ukraine. And that's what needs to happen at this summit.
Congressman Adam Smith, ranking member, House Armed Services Committee. Hope we get to talk to you on Friday, if not some point next week as well. Appreciate the time. Thank you, sir.
Happy to. Always appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. With me now, someone who knows what it's like to put these summits together, Mick Mulvaney, NewsNation contributor, former Trump White House chief of staff. Hello, sir. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm going to start here, Mick, and I don't know if it gets a chuckle out of you or not, because we had some reporting today on the president's preparation going into this. And the reporting was that he's in close contact with Rubio, Secretary of State Steve Witkoff, the Middle East envoy, and Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff. You know what it's like for him when he goes into this. What do you make of that being his team? And what is Trump doing right now to get ready for this?
No, I like the team a lot, and that makes complete sense. Trump is not going to go into this in the textbook fashion. You know, you hear stories about Barack Obama. He would sit and read memos for hours upon hours at a time before he would go into meetings like this. That's not how Trump works. Trump, I think he said earlier this week, he wants to look the guy in the eye. That's what this is about. By the way, I thought Congressman Smith said something spot on accurate, which is, what does success look like? Success looks like convincing Putin that the message that he thinks he got in January, February, March is different now. It changes the trajectory of the relationship. 3 months ago, he thought he could do whatever he wanted to in Ukraine, with maybe even with Trump's blessing. And if he walks out of Alaska going, I have a problem with these Americans, that's going to be success. I'm with Adam on that. I don't think you're going to get a deal here. And I don't think Trump is going to go back to your question about prep. He's not going to go into all the details about a larger agreement. That's not the purpose of this meeting. This is the first of several if it works out, well.
So you talk about wanting to look him in the eye, and there was a quote from Marco Rubio yesterday, the Secretary of State, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said just that Trump wants to be able to look him in the face, be one-on-one, inside the room with him, hear what he has to say, and that would seem, I think, logical to most folks. I had on the show yesterday Jack Barsky. He's a former KGB agent who's very open about his experiences and written about it, etc. I asked him about that Rubio quote. Mick, here's what Jack told me, and then I want to pick it up on the other side.
What Marco Rubio said, the Secretary Rubio, to me is meaningless. What we have here is three political narcissists who are working on their own legacy.
So he said that whole looking Putin in the eye thing is meaningless, which I found fascinating from his point of view, but I wonder from your point of view with Trump how that rings.
Yeah, you know, George Bush took a lot of heat, I think, back 25 years ago when he said he looked into
his soul
when they had a meeting. But there's something to that. There is something to sitting down and talking to somebody. Look, we deal with it in our everyday lives. How many people really like Zoom meetings or think they're as productive as face-to-face meetings? You're never going to get to know people as well face-to-face. So, look, I get the part about the legacy and so forth. If Trump's legacy is solving the problem in the war, what's wrong with that? If Trump's legacy is ending the war, that's a pretty good motivation for the meeting, I think. So I'm not sure why that would be a complaint. Look, Trump's style is different than other leaders. There's no question about it. By the way, I had a laugh. You showed that picture from Osaka in 2019. I think I'm just outside the frame on the left-hand side.
Or are you?
And watching them interact, face to face was fascinating. I hope we get a chance to see some of this live on TV this week.
It's so interesting for me to hear you say that because you were there off screen in Osaka in 2019. I was in the room in 2018. The first time that they met in Helsinki. And Mick, it's just different. Like, I can't explain it. I've been, and you're smirking because you know what I'm saying is true. And I want our audience to take this away for a second. It is just different when you are in a room with Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. It's a different feeling. Is it not, Mick?
It is, but look at our own lives. I mean, how many people are much meaner on texts and emails than they would be face-to-face? Talk about all the complaints we have about civil society, about people being able to interact with each other. And it's a skill that we've lost. It's a skill that Donald Trump still has. And he's convinced of his ability to sort of bring some charm into the conversation and to have a positive effect on this relationship. So it's why he is what he's doing. It's why he's been good in business. It's why he's been good at politics. He likes connecting with people. We'll see how it pays. So I will tell you this, and I remember this one thing from Osaka 2019. Yeah. Putin's a tough cookie. There is no question. And you saw that in Helsinki. This is not a warm and charming kind of guy that Trump's going to deal with.
When you're there, as you said, it doesn't feel like a warm and charming experience. We'll leave it there.
He wants to stab you in the head with a fork or something like that. Yeah. So.
Mick Mulvaney, News Nation contributor. Catch you tomorrow. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
We'll see you.
All right, programming note, by the way, special coverage of the bilateral summit on Friday. All starts 8 o'clock Eastern, Leland Vittert. Then that guy on the left over his shoulder there will also be hosting a special edition of The Hill at 10 o'clock. Live reports and analysis from the panel Friday night. Hope you join us right here on News Nation. But before then, it's still to come. Is it a Big Apple blowout? Zohran Mamdani already a shoo-in for New York City Mayor. Is that the case? Scott Tranter, Data Science Director, DDHQ. With me on the other side of the break with the brand new numbers. Plus, reporting for duty. National Guard troops patrol the streets of D.C. So which city is next? Maybe. Plus this.
We're going to also fix up a place called Washington, D.C. We're going to make it so beautiful again.
The president at the Kennedy Center today. What was he doing there? Welcome to Washington. I thank you for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Burman. I'll see you back on the other side of the break. 4 minutes out. $80 days, 83 days really to be exact, an eternity in politics. But is it getting close to game, set, match in New York City? A new poll has Zohran Mamdani, the New York State Assemblyman, the self-proclaimed Democratic Socialist, leading his opponents, including the former governor, Andrew Cuomo, by 19 points in the mayoral race there. Scott Tranter, Data Science Director, with our partners at DDHQ. He is the man behind the numbers, as I like to call him. With me now. Hello.
How you doing?
Here's why I wanted to get into this. That's the highest we've seen in this race to be the mayor of America's biggest city.
And it's against the conventional wisdom, right? Remember we talked a month ago, everyone said, hey, we're going to hear about Zohran Mamdani. It's going to eat away at his poll numbers. Now, that's not eating away his poll numbers. He's getting bigger. Now, you know I like averages, which we're going to show. So it's one poll.
But before we get into the averages, I'm not like a math guy or anything. But if you add up the 3 on the right, it equals the 1 on the left, Scott.
Which is also conventional wisdom, not shared by the 3 on the right.
All right, so that's sort of where things are right now. But here's the thing. You love trends. Trend up, trend down.
Yeah.
This is the DDHQ polling average on this race. I just showed you 44. That's a statistically significant above 39.
Correct.
So is that where this is heading?
Yeah, look, it's headed up. I mean, we'll say this. It's August. No one's really paying attention. We haven't had a debate. But again, this race has defied my expectations. If you would have asked me, and you did ask me a month ago, where this is going, I would say his poll numbers are going to go down a little bit as people understand who they are. The average has only gone up a little bit.
All right, so we look at the favorability ratings here, and this tells part of the story, right? And this is what we've continued to see. And we show Andrew Cuomo as he's polling second there. Mamdani is in the plus double digits there.
Yeah, and look, political consultants will tell you they like that don't know because that gives them a fair shot to at least move them into the favorable column. It's harder to move an unfavorable to a favorable. It's easier to move a don't know to a favorable. Still may end up in an unfavorable, but Mamdani, as they say, has more room to grow.
Interesting. All right, the thing that you and I are absolutely fascinated with and love to watch. Let's show Kalshi because we just showed the numbers here, right? And this is the betting markets. This is the last month. At this point, it was like a 70% chance of winning. Mamdani, Scott, now at 80%.
80%. Look, if this were a stock chart, this is where I would tell you, I think Mamdani's favored, but I think we're going to see a little bit of roller coaster, and I would expect Cuomo, he's got that team, that digital team, move up. That might be there might be some upside for Mamdani. Sorry, Cuomo.
We'll leave it there. He is the man behind the numbers. Scott Trainer, Data Science Director over at DDHQ. Scott, thank you. I promise you I'm not rude. I did say goodbye to Scott. I gave him a little fist bump as I walked over, but I come over to the table here. Joined now by Ronna McDaniel, the former chair of the Republican National Committee, with us tonight. And so too is Lindsey Granger, co-host of Rising on the Hill. You witnessed I did say goodbye to Scott.
You did. That's
You were very polite. I saw the fist bump.
Yes.
Very good.
Is this game, set, match? Is this over?
I mean, I don't know. It feels like that. I think when you talk about the Democrats and you're looking at who's primarying Mamdani, this is like a game of who can stay the furthest away from President Trump, just because that's the name of the game that everyone's playing. And so if Cuomo now has this ties or alleged phone call by the New York Times with Trump, and if we know that Eric Adams is only in the race because President Trump made it possible for him to do so, well, then Mamdani is by far, with that charisma, the front runner.
That's sort of Mamdani's game plan, is it not? Or at least in the recent days, is to tie, whether it works or not, we'll see. The others to Trump.
Right, and also Epstein, which we know is the big Trump red flag that's hanging over the administration right now. And so he just tied Cuomo to him very loosely. I know that that's not, it's very like a low blow game, but he's playing in the game, playing in the sand and saying, listen, I want to meet you where you're at. If you're going to bring up my rent stabilization when I made 47 grand and still live there, but he said he's moving, then I'm going to bring up the fact that you are untrustworthy to most New Yorkers at this point.
Yeah, it's getting dirty quick.
Yeah.
They're going low quick. There's a lot of runway, but I agree with Lindsey. And the other thing is that the polls aren't showing is energy. And I think Mamdani has a much more energetic base. It's a younger electorate. They're very enthused by his candidacy. He's really brought them out to vote in New York. And I think it's his to lose at this point.
So, I mean, there is still like I looked it up today, like 82 or 83 days, whatever the number is, just under 3 months. Is there time to close that gap? And how do you expect the others to go after him to try to do that?
I think there's absolutely time to close the gap. And I think some of it may be unforced errors by the candidate. You know, you don't know what Mamdani's going to say. He hasn't been a politician. So if he gets on that debate stage and he says things that New Yorkers don't like, there's absolutely that opportunity to turn it around. And we've seen that happen. And then Cuomo, you can't ever count him out.
Right.
He's going to have a good turnout campaign and a digital campaign. So we'll see what happens. I do think it'll tighten. But right now, those numbers look like it's a runaway.
Debate maybe in the next few weeks or so, or next month at some point in time. Is that the big one here?
I also just think the big one is the reason why President Trump won. People are still looking at the economy, still looking at their wallets, still looking at what's going on with the rent in New York, and he's actually talking about those things. People largely disagree with some of his policies. Some people fall in love with some of them, but he's actually talking to moms and saying, I want to make it cheaper for you. He's talking about bringing down prices of stabilization and rents in New York. He's talking to people that can't afford to figure out how to pay their credit card debt down, and they want to hear from him and hear solutions. And Cuomo
He's also talking about rent-controlled or city-owned grocery stores.
He is, which
out of Kansas City, rather, about one closing in the recent days if he gets on a debate stage.
And $30 minimum wage. I mean, some of the promises he's making are not true. They're pipe dreams. But it does play for people who are struggling economically.
All right. I'll see you both later in the show.
Yes.
Lindsay, Rana, thank you so much. Still to come tonight. Other side of the break, the president defending his decision to put boots on the ground in D.C.
The place is going to hell, and we've got to stop it.
National Guard troops here in the nation's capital. How much longer are they going to be here? And extreme makeover, the White House edition. Is that what's going on? The president putting his stamp on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and beyond. We'll explain when The Hill returns.
We're going to be essentially crime-free. This is going to be a beacon, and it's going to also serve as an example of what can be done.
6:30 here in Washington tonight. The president earlier today in this town, just 2 days after announcing essentially a takeover of the nation's capital, as some might call it. Today, he called the strategy a model to fight crime and clean up cities across the country. Tonight, federal agents and the National Guard all on the ground here in Washington, D.C. So, too, is our Joe Khalil, live outside tonight. Joe K., where are you? Hello.
So how you doing, Blake? We are at the Navy Yard, where we have seen federal agents on the ground over the last couple of nights here. I know it looks like we're having fun, but I promise we're doing work. Look, President Trump made a really big announcement today, big development in the story, when he said that beyond these 30 days, he's now going to go to Congress and ask them to extend this temporary takeover. And he says that if Congress doesn't give him the authority to do that, then he might just declare an emergency and do it. Take a listen.
So we're going to need a crime bill that we're going to be putting in, and it's going to pertain initially to D.C. We're going to use it as a very positive example, and we're going to be asking for extensions on that, long-term extensions, because you can't have 30 days.
So unclear at this point when this temporary takeover is going to be over. Blake talked about the National Guard here. We got some developments there, too. They are going to be starting tomorrow patrolling not just in the evenings, which we've seen before, but 24/7 and in heavier numbers, the White House says. Meantime, the other federal agents that we've been seeing from DEA, FBI, and the rest over here even, they are making arrests, unlike the National Guard, and they've been making quite a bit, more than 100, the White House says. They've also taken 24 guns off the streets, even made an arrest in a homicide. Blake, there are about 700 of those agents, the White House says, on the ground in D.C., which basically doubles the amount of law enforcement officers here. So they are here, and their presence certainly being felt, Blake.
Joe, this is a small but big town, right? It's small in size, but obviously big in population.
Yeah.
You've been out there over the last couple of days. Have you noticed a difference?
Yeah, we have noticed. We were at the wharf yesterday. If you've been to the wharf, this beautiful area where bars and restaurants, and we saw DEA agents walking around. Yeah, DEA agents walking around there. Even driving here now, we saw arrests on the side of the road, and it wasn't just one police car. It was several federal agents and police making arrests on the side of the road. Again, something you wouldn't normally see. So just, walking around, you can definitely notice it. As the sun goes down, it becomes really hard to miss.
Joe K., live tonight from the Navy Yard here in Washington. Joe, thank you. Appreciate it. The federal takeover. Last 30 days. To extend it, there needs to be congressional involvement. President Trump today calling for a crime bill, as he put it, to do just that and potentially expand that to other cities as well. With me now, Congressman from the state of Tennessee, David Kustoff, whose district runs through, at least in some parts, the great city of Memphis. Congressman, thanks for being with us tonight. I'm going to get to that in a second, but on this concept of how long this will last here in Washington. You obviously spend a pretty big portion of your time here. How long should it last?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on this evening. I'm also a former federal prosecutor. I'm a former U.S. attorney. And we all know that in D.C., the crime has run too high. The perceptions of the people, not only who live there, but of lawmakers, and maybe very importantly, our constituents who come there, they don't feel safe. You just showed reports from the Navy Yard, which for people watching, that's an area that was redeveloped in Washington, D.C. in the last 15 or 20 years, and it was safe until it wasn't safe. And in fact, you've had two lawmakers who stayed down in the Navy Yard and were attacked by violent crime in the past couple of years. So to me, the mission is not complete until the mission is complete, until people not only feel safe because of the perception, but you rid these people of committing crimes, violent crimes in Washington, D.C.
Look, the reality is the Republican Party has basically given the president everything he wants legislatively, right? You have backed his agenda. You've made it hard at some points, but you've given him what he wants. And if he keeps on coming to you for 30 days, 30 days, 30 days, are you going to back that?
Yeah. Well, my impression is we've got to extend it until the job gets done, and we'll rely on the president. We'll rely on the Department of Justice. We'll rely on feedback from federal and from local law enforcement. It seems to me that not only the federal law enforcement, but that local law enforcement has somewhat embraced the federal agents and the federal authorities from coming in and trying to help out, because Washington, D.C. is undermanned in their police department. They literally cannot hire enough police officers. So the answer to your question is we need to extend that authority, the president's authority, until the job is completed.
I mentioned you represent parts of Memphis. You know this, but for our audience here on News Nation or those listening to us on Sirius XM, eastern part of the town there, and then out as well, as I was looking at it today. I was also looking at crime stats, and Memphis, you know this, but a list I was looking at had Memphis ranked at the top of the list in this country when it comes to violent crimes, 2,349 for every 100,000 residents. Number one in the country. Do you want the president, do you believe that the president should send the National Guard in to Memphis, Tennessee?
Yeah, so it's a good question. You know, the president has the authority to do exactly what he's doing under the home rule that was passed in 1973. He's got the right to do that. Interesting legal question. I have some constituents that would welcome any additional resources. And you've heard the FBI Director Kash Patel talk about Memphis in particular. So I think whatever resources, federal, state, and local, that Memphis and my end of the state can utilize, we would welcome it. This is a good community. We've seen in Memphis the crime stats come down, which is good. But just like in Washington, perception means a lot. And in Washington, D.C., people do not feel safe right now. They don't feel safe walking down the street. So I would think that any community, whether it's Memphis or any other city that was on that list, would welcome whatever resources that they could get from the federal government.
Let me ask you this: would you make that request to the president, or you're not willing to go there yet?
Well, let me without getting too far in front, we've been talking to federal authorities about Memphis and about other areas. And so I will leave it there, but I think that whatever the federal government can come in and help local and state law enforcement, that's a win.
All right,
we need to get the bad guys off the street.
We'll leave it there. The congressman there from the state of Tennessee with us tonight here on the Hill. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Other side of the break, still to come tonight. President Trump over at the Kennedy Center today eyeing some big changes.
We're going to make it something that people can't even believe. We have some unbelievable plans.
And he's not stopping there. Other side of the break, full panel and a little bit of a pickup from our segment last night. That got a whole lot of comments. I'll show you some.
welcome to News Nation, where left and right come to be reasonable.
He's a Republican, I'm a Democrat, but we were sent up here to represent our country.
News Nation, news with respect for all Americans.
This is a very exciting project. We're going to do something that will go rapidly, relatively inexpensively, and we'll make it better than it ever was, frankly. It'll be something that people are going to be very proud of. Along with, in the bigger picture, a place called Washington, D.C.
The president earlier today at the Kennedy Center, of all spots. Shortly after taking office, President Trump would, in essence, appoint himself the chairman of the board of the National Performing Arts Center, seemingly just one aspect of a vision that the president now has for our nation's capital going forward. A vision that also includes the White House vetting Smithsonian Institution exhibits to make sure that they are in line with how the current administration feels they should be. The reinstallation, by the way, of a statue honoring a Confederate general, Albert Pike, that was toppled in 2020, now headed back up. And of course, the so-called federal takeover of the city itself, the safety aspect, as the president views it. Are we looking at a new nation's capital, a place that maybe you visited in the past or plan on visiting in the future? And is this really a model going forward, as the president talks about it as well? Full panel here with me now. Dr. Nicolai-Corte is a professor at Pepperdine University. Ronna McDaniel back with me, former chair of the Republican National Committee. Lindsey Granger, co-host of Rising on the Hill, new Washington resident, by the way, and Carla Sands, former ambassador to Denmark and Greenland in the first Trump administration. Hello to you all. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. You know the president well. What's he doing here?
This is vintage President Trump. This is the Capitol. He wants the Capitol to shine. He wants it to be safe. He cares about the arts. The Kennedy Center has been in disrepair. He wants to make sure that the Smithsonian is showing the best of America heading into our 250th year. So these are things that President Trump does. He's bold. And it's very in line. But on the safety part, I'm going to say, Blake, as somebody who's been here a lot, it doesn't feel safe.
Well, I'm going to get to the safety in a second. But on the first part of sort of like the cultural things, you can make the argument, do this, take it on, go forward. But are you surprised that he did it right out the gate?
No, I'm not surprised. I mean, he's been waiting 4 years on the wings and preparing. And so he was ready to come in. He knew those first 4 years, what they were like, and he came in with an agenda of what he wanted to do when he came here. But I do think he wants our nation's capital to shine. He wants people to come here and say, look at the Kennedy Center, look at the city, it's safe. It's a place that I want people to come to.
What's he doing here?
Well, he's doing the right thing. I've been very involved with performing arts organizations in our country, and I can say that the buildings were crumbling at the Kennedy Center. We knew that 20 years ago. They didn't fix it. We knew that it was not showing the America spirit. We saw the rainbow flag, not the American flag. Now we see red, white, and blue when we drive by. And he's even bringing forward, I would say, non-hating artists, like haters that aren't artists that are not hateful. And I think that's wonderful to think about going to the Kennedy Center and the artists are respectful of our country and the honor that they're receiving and not trying to preach like at the Academy
Give me the view from the other side.
Gladys Knight, Dionne Warwick, they've been honored at the Kennedy Center. There is not a hate-filled word coming out of their mouth. This is the president really choreographing a very heavy-handed approach to keeping D.C. safe. Look, D.C. was safe. The crime numbers have been down.
That's not true.
It is. Well, it is true. And according to statistics from the FBI, D.C. crime has been headed in the right direction.
So just on that point, you are correct. It's been coming down in the last year. When you zoom out, though, it went up and then down. Just to give folks the full picture.
It's headed in the right direction. The mayor of D.C. didn't ask for this. The people of D.C. didn't ask for this. I've lived here in Washington, D.C. for almost 10 years. Yes, there are hot spots. This is an urban community. There will always be hot spots.
You feel safe here?
Absolutely.
All the time?
Do you feel safe everywhere all the time?
It has felt different here in the last few years, I will say.
I mean, as a black man, I don't feel safe everywhere I go.
Okay. Lindsey, these are viewer comments that we've gotten. So we did this segment last night, and last I checked, it was like 70,000 views on YouTube and 500 comments. I'll give you both sides here. One,
okay.
I've traveled to D.C. over the years and felt quite safe. Seeing people waiting around in full combat gear, law enforcement officers, ICE, and military is disgusting. Expect to see more folks carrying weapons openly. State of emergency is being fabricated by the current regime to expand control and seize power. Other side, President Trump, or the job of the government is to keep the streets safe. If there are no consequences, crime goes up. It is as simple as that.
So I don't think there's an argument that people want a safer street, right? That's like a blanket statement. I think we all can agree on. Yeah, everyone wants to be safe and have their families be safe. But I think that the part that confuses me is that this completely undermines the autonomy of local officials to effectively do their job. And part of the Republican entire standing point is that local officials should be empowered to have more autonomy and authority. And it feels very intrusive, similar to what happened in LA or similar to bringing it up in cities like Baltimore and other places that you want to move forward and then take over federal control when it technically was not a state of emergency by any normal standards looking at numbers. Right. And so that's the part that I am confused about why now and why this moment, because there are Republican states like Ohio, 2 major cities there, Cleveland and Toledo, that both have way higher crime rates than DC, like by far.
I just pointed it out to the congressman from Memphis. His city was
so yeah. Memphis is #1. So
right.
It's just like if we're going to fix something and get federal involvement, why not start there?
Washington D.C. I think home rule is a failed experiment. I think that Congress should take it back over and do a better job so that we are safe. I think that also I heard that the person that was keeping the statistics for crime in Washington D.C. was fudging the numbers and was fired.
Well, that's allegedly.
But you also, the head of the police union did say that they're 800 short on police officers, that their officers are overstretched, that they're doing 2 million hours in overtime. They're being denied family vacations. This was in May of this year. The head of the police union, he said it's the worst he has ever seen, the state of the police force in D.C. I have a daughter who works in D.C. I worry about it at night. I go to bed and I worry about my daughter. I worry about her walking home. Parents should be able to send their kids to the nation's capital and feel that their kids are safe. That is what President Trump is doing.
There are plenty of parents that are wringing their hands right now because they're sending their kids back to the nation's capital, but they're sending them back to a nation's capital that's been taken over by forces that have been federalized. Let's be clear, the National Guard, they're not trained in local policing. I'm worried for the students at Howard University, at George Washington, at Georgetown, right? Potentially having a negative encounter with law enforcement that's been federalized. Look at what happened in LA, where a 15-year-old disabled student was detained by ICE agents there. There was a gun drawn out on that student, as reported by the LA Times.
Are you willing to give this a chance in major cities?
This is unnecessary. The city of D.C. did not ask for this. I think Mayor Bowser's doing the best that she can to work with President Trump and federal officials. There's always been a partnership. You talk about law enforcement here. D.C. doesn't just have the Metropolitan Police. They have the Park Police. They have the Secret Service. There are so many different law enforcement agencies that keep the city safe.
I think that communities need collaboration. And so if we're talking about targeting young kids, which are the people that maybe not all of them are criminals because they look a certain way or are outside late with no parents that make them come inside late, we can talk about having programs that help them get out of the street, like targeted youth engagement programs or housing programs for people that are homeless. So there are other solutions I think federal help can assist.
A big discussion, not only in this town, but in others all across the country. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Still to come here on the Hill. Zoom out for a second. I'm going to explain to you on the other side of the break something remarkable that is happening, and it could potentially impact your wallet. My take on the other side. And coming up on Elizabeth Vargas Reports, a major announcement from the FDA commissioner as he cracks down on a synthetic and highly addicted opioid sold in gas stations. This was a big story in the state of Florida today. Elizabeth with it in 8 minutes' time. My take and what's trending on the other side of the break. All right, if you're just getting home, trying to catch up on your day, here's just some of what's trending right now on thehill.com. This is going to be the big story over the next, 48, 72 hours or so. The president warns of severe consequences if Russia doesn't stop the Ukraine war after the meeting with Vladimir Putin. That, of course, happening Friday evening. Also trending. How about this? Texas Senate passes GOP-friendly House map. It was a 19-2 vote in the state Senate. That sort of kicks all of this going forward. Congressional maps there in Texas likely to be drawn again. And This one I even clicked on earlier today. Dodger star Shohei Ohtani, an agent accused of sabotaging $240 million Hawaii real estate project. The best player in Major League Baseball tied up in this right now. Just some of what is trending right now on thehill.com. To check out those stories and more, all you have to do is scan that QR code on your screen or head on over to The Hill. All right, time for my take now. It is pretty remarkable times that we are living in, and for lots of reasons. This, just one of them. At the corner of Wall and Broad today, up and to the right, continuing. The S&P 500, the broadest measure of the American stock market, closing yet again at another all-time high. So too, by the way, the NASDAQ, which encompasses those monster tech stocks. But it doesn't end there. Bitcoin hitting an all-time high today as well. Ethereum hitting all-time highs as well. Money of all kinds flying. Comforting for the roughly 55% of Americans who hold a retirement account, for example. Now, we don't know how long this moment will last. After all, up into the right is not constant. All you have to do is just look back to April when there was fear everywhere. At every turn, you can find predictions, worry, or excitement, wherever you are on the spectrum, of where all this heads. After all, in the midst of this run, the current administration wants interest rates lowered. That could be on the horizon as well. But as we say good night on this night, at least a moment here to acknowledge just one facet of the remarkable times currently upon us. You see what's going on there at the corner of Wall and Broad. I thank you so much for watching us tonight here on The Hill. We'll be back tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern. I hope you tune in then. It's going to be the big story, Trump and Putin at the end of the week. I'm Blake Burman. See you tomorrow.